MotoGP this weekend in Japan qualifying was full of surprises. Saturday's sprint was kind of unexpected, and Sunday's main race, Marc Marquez said, was boring. But before I get into the entire weekend recap, if you could please subscribe, help us grow here on YouTube. And a fun little fact, I basically respond to every single comment. So come talk MotoGP with me. So the first surprising thing in qualifying in Japan was that Fabio Quartararo showed enough speed to get out of Q1 into Q2 along with Franco Morbidelli. But once he got there, he couldn't progress any further up the order. Fabio starts the race and sprint from 12th place. But the real shockers were yet to come, because pole maven, expert, savant, aficionado Jorge Martin crashes out of qualifying and then has to end up starting the Grand Prix from 11th place. And then Marc Marquez set the fastest lap ever run around the Motegi circuit, until they informed him he had violated the sacred laws of track limits. Touch the green paint, do not pass go, do not collect $200, your lap don't count, you're starting 9th, Marc Marquez. Which means sitting on pole for the very first time in his MotoGP career, the third youngest pole setter ever, rookie wonder boy Pedro Acosta. Now, Pecco Bagnaia may be the least surprising thing being on the front row with him, but Maverick Viñales starting P3, that surprised me because I said he was going to be nowhere this weekend. Well, at the beginning of the sprint race, Maverick Viñales proved me right by going backwards, and Pedro Acosta surprised us all by hanging at the front. He was taking the fight to Bagnaia, challenging him, passing him, and then pulling a gap. And at this point, I was thinking, Pedro, we've seen this story before. We've seen riders this season go on a tear and put in the fastest laps of the race in the middle of the race and push really, really hard, and then they are in the gravel, and unfortunately, it had happened again. Pedro Acosta loses the front, hands the win to Pecco Bagnaia, and Jorge Martin, the salvage job of a lifetime, maybe. Bastianini finishes second, Marc Marquez finishes third, and Jorge Martin was in fourth. But maybe it was just the salvage job for a Saturday, because we still had a Sunday Grand Prix, and he was going to top himself. But on Sunday, it really was Pecco Bagnaia imposing his will on the rest of the grid, and Pedro Acosta yet again tried to go with him, and the pace was just too hot. He has a very awkward, slow speed get-off in the last corner, and his race is over. 2 DNFs in 2 races. But Jorge Martin was determined to lose the minimum amount of points to Pecco this weekend, storms through the field, fights off Enea, fights off Marc Marquez, gets himself into second position, tries to go after Pecco. He got the gap down to about half a second before Pecco said, "Yeah, no, I'm just running this pace all day long. I can do this all day long." And finally, Jorge Martin had to say, "Yeah, second place is pretty darn good from where I started this weekend." Further back, Marc Marquez does fend off the hard-charging Enea Bastianini, gets that last spot on the podium. The Beast has to settle for 4th. Morbidelli 5th, and despite a really good start from Brad Binder, can only manage 6th, but once again is the highest finishing KTM. And rounding out the top 10, you had Bezzecchi, Digia, Aleix Espargaro, and Jack Miller.